A billionaire walked into one of the most luxurious restaurants in the city with her little son, expecting nothing more than a peaceful afternoon together. But before she even reached her table, she froze. Across the room sat a tired single father quietly cutting food into tiny pieces for his daughter. The moment their eyes met, the billionaire did something that left every guest speechless. Forks stopped in midair, conversations faded into silence, and no one could believe what happened next. If you believe kindness can change lives, forgiveness heals broken hearts, and second chances can create miracles, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our community that believes hope is always worth fighting for. The afternoon sunlight poured through the enormous windows of the Grand Wellington restaurant, filling the marble floors with warm golden light. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the quiet sounds of piano music floated gently through the elegant dining room. Everything looked perfect, but perfection often hides stories no one notices. Vivian Harper had spent the last 12 years building one of the country's largest technology companies. Every magazine called her the Ice Queen of business because she rarely smiled in public and never allowed emotions to influence her decisions. Billion-dollar contracts were easier for her than conversations about feelings. Yet every Friday afternoon belonged to only one person in her world. Her 8-year-old son, Elliot. No meetings. No investors. No interviews. Only lunch with the little boy who had quietly carried the emptiness left behind when cancer took his father 4 years earlier. Elliot was bright, polite, and unusually observant. While other children asked for expensive toys, he collected stories about people. His favorite question was always the same. What makes someone smile again after they've forgotten how? Vivian never had a good answer. As they entered the restaurant, every employee greeted them warmly. The manager personally escorted them toward their reserved table near the windows. That was when Elliot gently tugged on his mother's sleeve. His eyes had wandered across the room. A man in simple clothes sat at a small table with a little girl who couldn't have been older than 6. The father carefully blew on each spoonful of mashed potatoes before placing it onto his daughter's plate. His own meal remained untouched. The little girl giggled every time he pretended the spoon was an airplane. Their clothes were clean but worn. His jacket had been stitched at one elbow. His shoes had clearly seen better years. Yet there was something beautiful about the way he looked at his daughter. Not with exhaustion. Not with regret. Only unconditional love. "Dad forgot to eat," Elliot whispered. Vivian looked. The boy was right. The father hadn't taken a single bite. Instead, every piece of food went to his daughter first. Without realizing it, Vivian kept watching. The waitress approached the man's table carrying a bill. His smile disappeared. He quietly reached into his wallet. Counted several worn bills. Then counted coins. Then counted again. His shoulders lowered. The waitress smiled kindly and told him she would return in a few minutes. The little girl noticed the worry in his face and immediately pushed half her plate toward him. He smiled again, pretending everything was fine. Vivian suddenly remembered another afternoon years earlier. She and her late husband had once skipped lunch so Elliot could enjoy an expensive birthday cake they couldn't really afford while building the company from a tiny rented office. Success had erased many memories. This one returned all at once. She asked the manager who the man was. The manager quietly explained that his name was Graham Mercer. He worked construction whenever jobs were available. His wife had died during childbirth 6 years earlier. Every Saturday he brought his daughter, Clara, somewhere special, even if it meant eating very little himself during the rest of the week. "He always orders one meal," the manager said softly. "Then tells us he's already eaten." Vivian looked back. The empty plate in front of Graham suddenly meant something completely different. It wasn't because he wasn't hungry. It was because love always fed someone else first. Elliot looked at his mother. Can we help? Vivian hesitated. For years she had donated millions to charities. But charity often happened through signatures. Not eye contact. Not shared tables. Not human connection. Something inside her finally broke open. Instead of sitting at her reserved table, she walked directly across the restaurant. Every conversation stopped. Guests watched in confusion. Executives recognized the famous billionaire immediately. They expected her to complain. Instead, Vivian gently pulled out the empty chair across from Graham. She smiled. Not the practiced smile seen on magazine covers. A real one. She quietly asked if she and Elliot could join them because her son thought their table looked much happier. Graham looked completely stunned. Clara immediately smiled and nodded enthusiastically. Within moments, Elliot and Clara were laughing together over crayons the restaurant provided. Children never cared about bank accounts. Only kindness. Vivian noticed Graham trying to hide embarrassment about his worn jacket. She changed the subject completely, asking Clara about school. The little girl proudly described her dream of becoming a veterinarian because animals never judged people. Vivian felt tears threatening her carefully controlled composure. After lunch, Graham quietly excused himself, intending to pay before anyone noticed. When he reached the register, the manager smiled. The bill had already been covered. Not only today's meal. Every Saturday lunch for the next 5 years. Graham immediately turned around. Vivian simply shook her head. She didn't want gratitude. She wanted dignity. As they prepared to leave, Elliot surprised everyone. He removed the small notebook he carried everywhere. Inside were handwritten questions about people he admired. He handed it to Graham. One page read, "What's the bravest thing you've ever done?" Graham stared at the question for a long moment. Then he answered. "Being afraid every day, but making sure my daughter never notices." Vivian felt something inside her change forever. The answer stayed with her all weekend. Monday morning, while reviewing applications for a new facilities manager position, one resume caught her attention. Graham Mercer. Years earlier he had studied engineering before leaving college after his wife became seriously ill. Life had interrupted his dreams. Not his ability. Vivian requested an interview. Graham almost declined. He owned only one decent shirt. He believed billion-dollar companies hired polished professionals, not exhausted fathers. But Clara begged him to try. When he arrived, he expected difficult questions. Instead, Vivian asked him how he kept moving after losing everything. He answered honestly. Because someone still needed breakfast every morning. No rehearsed speeches. No corporate buzzwords. Only truth. She hired him. Not out of pity. Out of respect. Months passed. Graham transformed neglected maintenance systems across the company. His practical experience solved problems expensive consultants had ignored for years. Employees admired him because he listened before speaking. He remembered every janitor's name. He thanked security guards. He fixed broken equipment himself whenever possible. Slowly the company culture changed. People stopped competing to impress executives. They started helping one another. Vivian noticed something remarkable. Profits actually increased. Not because of aggressive strategies. Because happy employees cared more. Meanwhile Elliot and Clara became inseparable friends. Weekend picnics replaced formal restaurant lunches. Children laughed. Adults slowly healed. One rainy afternoon Elliot asked Graham whether he ever became angry that life had treated him unfairly. Graham looked toward Clara playing nearby. "I used to be angry every morning. What changed? I realized my daughter was learning how to face life by watching me. Those words reached Vivian more deeply than any business seminar ever had. For years she had taught leadership through numbers. Graham taught it through quiet example. Nearly 2 years after that unforgettable restaurant meeting, Vivian organized the company's annual celebration. Hundreds of employees filled the auditorium. Everyone expected another speech about growth and innovation. Instead, Vivian told the true story of a father who skipped meals so his daughter could eat. She admitted that despite becoming one of the wealthiest women in America, she had almost forgotten what genuine success looked like. Then she invited Graham onto the stage. The audience rose in applause before he even reached the microphone. He wasn't famous. He wasn't wealthy. But everyone knew the difference he had made. Graham simply thanked everyone and reminded them that every person carries invisible battles. He encouraged them never to assume someone's worth based on clothes, titles, or circumstances. The standing ovation lasted several minutes. After the celebration ended, Vivian and Elliot visited the same restaurant where everything had begun. This time, Graham and Clara were already waiting. They sat together by the same windows. The same afternoon sunlight warmed the room. Only one thing had changed. No one at the table worried about whether there would be enough food. As dessert arrived, Elliot smiled at his mother. "You finally answered my question." Vivian looked puzzled. "The one about how people smile again." She realized he was right. People smile again when someone chooses compassion instead of judgment. When dignity replaces pity. When strangers become family. Before we reach the end of this story, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a small act of kindness that completely changed your life, or have you been able to change someone else's day with compassion? Please leave a meaningful comment and share the lesson that touched your heart the most. Years later, people still spoke about the afternoon when a billionaire walked into an elegant restaurant and surprised everyone by sitting beside a struggling single father. Most believed the miracle was the job that followed or the opportunities that changed his future. But the real miracle happened much earlier. It happened the moment two people stopped seeing wealth and poverty and started seeing humanity. One simple decision turned strangers into lifelong friends, restored hope where despair had quietly settled, and taught two children that the greatest fortune anyone can possess is a heart willing to care for someone else. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all remember that the smallest act of kindness can become the beginning of someone else's greatest second chance.